One family gathering cost me everything. Over $12,000 wiped from my account, leaving me with barely enough for groceries. The culprits? My sister and brother-in-law, who felt entitled to my hard-earned money. Facing their chilling lack of remorse and my parents' silent approval, I knew this wasn't just theft. It was the ultimate betrayal. This time I wouldn't just walk away heartbroken. I'd walk away fighting. The city hum felt distant as I, Maria Garcia, unlocked the door to my small apartment. At 32, the exhaustion from the weekend-long family gathering felt like it was settling deep into my bones, heavier than my actual years, perhaps. Everything seemed blessedly normal, a quiet contrast to the chaos of the past few days, at least until I opened my banking app, ready to transfer money for the looming electric bill. My eyes went blurry, struggling to focus on the number glaring back from the screen. $75.19? I blinked hard, checked it 3 times, then again, convinced it had to be a glitch, a cruel trick played by my overtired eyes. Just 2 days ago, over $12,000 had sat comfortably in that account. I felt the blood drain from my face, a cold wave washing over me. My heart pounded violently against my ribs, a frantic drummer trapped inside my chest. With hands that refused to stay steady, I immediately dialed the bank's customer service line. After stumbling through the necessary security questions, my voice trembling slightly, the representative delivered the chilling confirmation. The transactions were made from a device previously logged into the account, Ms. Garcia. The IP address matches a personal computer registered to your mother's residence. The words hit me like ice water. My mother's house, the suburban home that had just hosted our sprawling family event. Without a conscious thought, I stood up, grabbed my keys from the counter, and was out the door, heading straight back there, needing answers. The familiar scent of my mom Elena's cooking did little to soothe me as I walked back into the house I grew up in. My sister, Isabella, sat casually on the living room sofa, legs crossed, sipping a glass of white wine, looking completely unbothered, as if my abrupt return wasn't the least bit strange. Back so soon? Her voice lilted, deceptively light. David, my brother-in-law, emerged from the den, holding a half-eaten sandwich, leaning against the doorframe with an air of bored amusement. That look always made my stomach clench. I checked my bank account, I stated, the words feeling thick and heavy in my throat, my voice barely a whisper despite the effort to sound firm. David exchanged a glance with Isabella, a small, knowing smirk playing on his lips. "Oh, right, that," he said nonchalantly, taking another bite. Isabella sighed dramatically, setting her wineglass down. "Look, Maria," she began, her tone patronizing, "we just needed it more than you do right now. Simple as that." The sheer audacity of it hit me like a slap, leaving me momentarily speechless. My mother appeared then, her expression mild concern, while my father, Robert, peered over his reading glasses from his armchair. "Honey, you know things are tight for them," Mom said softly. "You've got stability. It's what family does. Help each other out." Dad nodded solemnly. "But how?" I finally managed. Isabella shrugged, dismissive. "Your account was still logged in on Mom's old desktop. You really shouldn't leave things open like that." The blame, incredibly, was being shifted to me. I stumbled out of the house, the familiar suburban street suddenly feeling alien and hostile. The casual cruelty, the complete lack of remorse. It suffocated me. I drove numbly to a small local park nearby, the one with the aging swing set where Isabella and I used to play, needing air, needing space to process the betrayal. Sitting on a cold park bench as the afternoon faded, the dam inside me finally broke. Years of memories flooded my mind, sharp and painful. Isabella needing help with her car down payment. David, perpetually between jobs, needing a few hundred to tide him over. Mom's urgent calls about overdue utility bills. Dad needing help covering a medical copay. Each time the justification was the same. Maria, you're the stable one. You're doing so well. Family helps family. They painted it as a compliment, a testament to my strength. But sitting there, shivering despite the mild weather, I saw it for what it was. An expectation, an entitlement. They never asked if I was okay, if dipping into my savings meant I had to cut back, skip vacations, or delay my own goals. I remembered cancelling a trip with friends last year because David had another emergency. I was their financial safety net, their personal ATM, never a daughter or sister who might also need support or even just understanding. A cold resolve began to harden within the hurt. I pulled out my phone, not to call anyone, but to open a new note. I started typing, recalling every loan, every gift, every bailed-out bill. I wouldn't forget. Not this time. Back in the quiet sanctuary of my own apartment, the raw hurt from the park began to transform into a cold, hard determination. The image of Isabella's shrug, of David's smirk, burned behind my eyes. They needed it more than you. The sheer, unadulterated entitlement was staggering. I wasn't just going to let this fade into another uncomfortable family memory, politely ignored at the next holiday dinner. This time was different. The next morning, my voice steady and clear, I called the bank again, formally requesting a full, detailed transaction report for the past 30 days, demanding specifics on originating devices and IP addresses. When the encrypted file arrived via email, it felt heavy, significant. I printed all 17 pages, the black ink stark against the white paper. Methodically, I went through each line item, a red pen clenched in my hand, marking every suspicious withdrawal, every transfer I hadn't authorized. One entry leaped out, a single anonymous transfer for nearly $3,500, time-stamped during the family gathering weekend, originating directly from my mother's home IP address. The confirmation sent a chill down my spine. Then, I turned to my own digital archives, pulling up old emails, saved text message threads, and years of online bank statements. Late into the night, fueled by coffee and a righteous anger I hadn't felt before, I meticulously documented every single loan, every gift, every emergency fund transfer I'd ever sent their way, creating a spreadsheet that painted a devastating picture of years of financial drain. This wasn't just about the stolen thousands. It was about reclaiming the truth. The following Sunday, I walked back into my parents' house for the obligatory dinner, but this time, I carried a heavy folder along with the dish I'd brought. The air was thick with unspoken tension, a stark contrast to the usual forced pleasantries. Isabella pointedly avoided my gaze, while David attempted an overly casual demeanor that didn't quite mask his unease. I didn't wait for dessert. Placing the folder squarely on the dining table during a lull in conversation, I looked directly at them. "I've reviewed my detailed bank statements," I announced, my voice calmer than I felt. The large withdrawal, nearly $3,500, was definitively traced to the IP address connected to Mom's computer. "I was here that weekend, yes, but I never logged into my bank account on that machine." Silence hung heavy. Mom nervously pleated her napkin. Dad cleared his throat, but said nothing. It was Isabella, predictably, who broke it, her voice laced with defiance. "Like I said, Maria, you must have left it logged in. It's not like we hacked you." I met her stare. "So, you admit you accessed it and initiated the transfer without my permission?" She shrugged again, that infuriatingly dismissive gesture. "It's not the first time you've helped out." "Helping is when someone asks, and the other person agrees." I shot back, the words sharp. "This was taking. This was theft. While I was working 60-hour weeks to pay off my student loans, skipping vacations so you wouldn't get evicted, eating ramen so Mom could pay her bills. This is how you repay that trust?" Their stunned silence was answer enough. I gathered my things. "If you think this is over," I said, pausing at the door, "just wait and see." Leaving their stunned faces behind felt less like a victory and more like crossing a point of no return. The anger still simmered, but beneath it lay a profound sadness for the family I thought I had. However, sadness wouldn't pay my bills or undo the violation of trust. The next morning, dressed in my most professional attire, I walked into the downtown police headquarters, my heart pounding a steady, resolute rhythm against my ribs. I asked for the Financial Crimes Division, clutching the thick folder I'd meticulously organized over the weekend. Inside was everything: the printed bank statements with highlighted unauthorized transactions, copies of old emails and text messages documenting previous financial requests, and my subsequent transfers, and the detailed spreadsheet outlining years of financial drain, color-coded for clarity. A calm, serious-faced detective named Officer Miller listened patiently as I laid out the sequence of events, from discovering the missing funds to the cold admission from Isabella and David, and the documented proof of access from my mother's computer. He carefully reviewed the documents I provided, his expression growing more focused with each page. He examined the USB drive containing the digital files. "Based on this evidence, Ms. Garcia," he stated finally, his voice measured, "we certainly have grounds to open a formal investigation into unauthorized access to financial information and potential larceny." He asked for the full names and addresses of everyone involved: Isabella, David, Elena, and Robert. Handing over that list felt surreal, but necessary. I walked out of the precinct under a grey, indifferent sky, not with a sense of triumph, but with the quiet, firm conviction that I was finally doing the right thing. For myself. The following weeks unfolded with a strange, detached quiet on my end, punctuated by the growing storm I knew was brewing elsewhere. Officer Miller called periodically with brief updates. The investigation was proceeding. Interviews were being conducted. Then, the frantic messages began. First it was Isabella, a string of increasingly panicked texts. Her bank account was frozen. She couldn't pay her rent. How could I do this to her? Next came David, leaving angry voicemails that quickly devolved into desperate pleading after, as I later heard through the grapevine, he was suspended from his job pending an internal investigation related to unexplained funds. The arrogance and mockery I'd witnessed just weeks before had evaporated, replaced by raw fear. My mother, Eleanor, tried a different tactic, tearful calls begging me to reconsider, appealing to family loyalty, reminding me of everything they had supposedly done for me. The final blow came via a terse email from my father, Robert, something he rarely initiated. It simply stated the bank had issued a formal foreclosure warning on their house. They had 30 days to come up with a substantial payment or lose the home they'd lived in for decades. There was no apology, no admission of wrongdoing, just the stark fact laid bare, hanging in the digital air with the unspoken, lifelong expectation that I would somehow fix it. I read each message, each email, my chest tightening not with guilt, but with a weary clarity. I blocked Isabella's and David's numbers. I let my parents' calls go to voicemail. This time, the silent treatment wasn't theirs to wield. It was my necessary shield. The constant barrage of desperate messages and the heavy weight of their expectations finally pushed me to make a decision I hadn't realized I needed until that moment. Healing wasn't going to happen here, not in the city that held so many painful memories and easy access for them. I put in a request for an extended, indefinite leave of absence from my project manager position, citing personal reasons, and my boss, thankfully understanding, approved my request to work remotely. Without telling a soul in my family, I methodically packed my essential belongings into my car. One quiet, grey Wednesday morning, I simply drove away, leaving the familiar skyline behind me without a backward glance. I headed east, towards the mountains, eventually settling in a small, peaceful town nestled in the Blue Ridge. Asheville, North Carolina felt like a world away. I found a modest studio apartment with large windows overlooking trees instead of concrete. The first thing I did was change my phone number, sharing it only with work and a couple of trusted friends. Slowly, tentatively, I began to build a life just for me. The silence was profound initially, almost unnerving, but gradually it became comforting. Without the constant drain of family drama and financial requests, my energy returned. I slept soundly for the first time in years. My focus sharpened, and strangely liberated, my work thrived. 2 months after settling in, my boss called, not with problems, but with an offer. Senior project lead for the entire division. The promotion felt like validation, a quiet affirmation that stepping away had been the right path. Life in Asheville settled into a gentle rhythm, quiet and blessedly mine. I started doing the small things I'd always put off, until later. I finally perfected my grandmother's lasagna recipe, filling my small apartment with comforting aromas. I joined a weekend painting class at a local studio, finding unexpected joy in the simple act of mixing colors on a canvas, creating something just for myself. One afternoon, an email landed in my inbox from an unfamiliar name, Sophia Russo. It took me a moment to place her, Isabella's quiet cousin-in-law, someone I'd only exchanged brief pleasantries with at awkward family functions years ago. The subject line read, "Thinking of you, Maria." Curious, I opened it. Sophia wrote tentatively, saying she'd heard through the family grapevine about what had happened and how I'd handled it. She confessed she'd been trapped in a similar dynamic for years, constantly expected to financially support her own parents and siblings, labeled selfish if she ever hesitated. Learning about my decision to report the theft and ultimately leave, she wrote, had given her the courage to finally say no, to start setting boundaries she desperately needed. Reading her words, a warmth spread through my chest. It wasn't vindication, it was connection. Knowing my painful journey had inadvertently lit a path for someone else felt profound. I realized then that true family wasn't about blood ties steeped in obligation, but about mutual respect and genuine care. I didn't need Eleanor or Isabella's understanding anymore. I was finding my own tribe, piece by peaceful piece. My journey taught me a powerful, albeit painful lesson. Establishing healthy boundaries, even with the family I once loved fiercely, isn't selfish. It's fundamental self-preservation. It's demanding the basic respect I always deserved, but never received. I learned firsthand that true connection can't survive alongside manipulation and entitlement, and I wasn't obligated to sacrifice my own stability and peace just because we shared blood. Recognizing those toxic patterns, trusting that persistent ache in my gut that told me something was deeply wrong, and finally prioritizing my own financial and emotional health. That was essential, not optional. I truly understood that I didn't have to set myself on fire just to keep others warm. Walking away from that consuming blaze was the only way I could save myself and finally find the quiet peace I cherish today. What are your thoughts on my decision to take legal action and ultimately distance myself? Have you ever faced a situation where family expectations conflicted with your own well-being? Share your perspective in the comments below. I truly value your insights and stories. Please like this video if my experience resonated with you, and subscribe or follow our channel for more compelling real-life narratives.